Hey everyone, tonight we're going to dive into the gritty, frostbitten world of medieval peasants. Those unsung heroes who battled winter's icy grip with nothing but ingenuity, stubbornness, and a questionable amount of sheep grease. Picture yourself in a creaky hut, wind howling through cracks, your breath fogging in the air. You probably won't survive this without some serious tricks up your sleeve. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. It's always cool to see who's joining us from across the globe. Now, turn down the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's get started tonight. You wake to the kind of cold that doesn't just nip at your skin, it sinks its teeth in and refuses to let go. It's a winter morning in a medieval village, sometime around the 1302nd, and the world outside your flimsy hut is a frozen wasteland. The air stings your face like a slap from an angry nun, and your breath hangs in front of you, a foggy reminder that you're still alive, at least for now. Medieval winters weren't just a season, they were a test, a brutal gauntlet that separated the clever from the corpse. You're a peasant, not a knight or a lord, so there's no cozy castle waiting for you, no roaring fireplace tended by servants. Your home is a creaky box of mud and sticks, and your survival depends on outsmarting the cold with whatever you've got. Spoiler, it's not much. Let's paint the scene. Your hut is what historians call wattle and daub, which sounds charming, until you realize it's just twigs slathered with a mix of mud, straw, and, yes, animal dung. It's less rustic chic and more, please don't collapse on me. The walls are so thin you can hear the wind plotting its next move outside, whistling through gaps like it's auditioning for a ghost story. There's no glass in the windows. Glass is for fancy folk who don't smell like turnips. Instead, you've got a hole in the wall covered with a scrap of animal hide, which flaps pathetically when the wind gets frisky. The roof, thatch, which looks great in paintings, but sags under snow like a tired old donkey. And the floor, just dirt, packed hard, maybe sprinkled with some straw if you're feeling fancy. When it snows, the cold seeps up from the ground like an evil spirit, making your toes curl in protest. This isn't just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Frostbite is a real threat, creeping up on fingers and toes like a thief in the night. Hypothermia doesn't even bother knocking. It just strolls in and makes itself at home. In 1315, during the Great Famine, winter turned deadly for thousands across Europe. Crops failed, livestock froze, and entire villages vanished under snow. You know the stakes. Waking up with all your toes is a victory worth celebrating, maybe with a slightly less frozen turnip for breakfast. Historians still debate whether more peasants died from starvation or exposure during those brutal years. But either way, you're not keen on becoming a statistic. You've got no proper insulation, no central heating, just a stubborn streak and a few tricks passed down from your parents. You stuff rags into the cracks in the walls, hoping to slow the wind's invasion. You layer every piece of clothing. You own 2 tunics, a cloak that smells like it's been through a barnyard brawl, and some questionable socks made from scraps. It's not enough, but it's a start. Oddly, one of your best defenses is the grime on your clothes. That layer of dirt and grease, it's like medieval Gore-Tex, clogging the fabric's holes and keeping out some of the chill. You're not winning any hygiene awards, but who cares when survival's on the line? Here's a lighthearted jab for you. Modern folks complain about a chilly office, But you're out here wondering if your nose is still attached or just frozen to your face. Another fun fact, some peasants smeared sheep fat on their hands and feet, thinking it'd keep the cold at bay. Smelled like a butcher's shop. But hey, at least you could slide into bed like a greasy sled. And speaking of bed, don't get too excited, it's just a sack of straw on the floor, prickly and full of fleas, but it's better than sleeping on bare dirt. You're learning fast. Winter doesn't care about your comfort, only your cunning. You glance at the hearth, the heart of your home, where a small fire sputters like it's got a personal grudge against you. That fire's your lifeline, but it's a needy one, demanding constant attention. Let it die, and you might as well invite the cold in for tea. You're not just fighting for warmth, you're fighting for another day. The wind howls outside, and you pull your cloak tighter, already planning how to make it through the night. Spoiler, it's going to involve a lot of huddling, a few prayers, and maybe a goat or two for company. Welcome to winter, peasant style, where every breath is a small rebellion against the freeze. You're standing in your medieval hut, and the wind's screaming outside like it's got a personal vendetta against your happiness. Your home, if you can call it that, is a wattle and daub masterpiece, think sticks, woven like a drunk basket weaver's fever dream, smeared with a charming blend of mud, straw, and oh yeah, animal dung. It's not exactly a fortress. The walls are so flimsy, you're pretty sure a determined squirrel could punch through them. Winter's here, and this rickety shack is your only defense against a season that's less winter wonderland and more frozen death trap. You're not just battling the cold, you're in a full-on war, with a house that seems to invite every gust of wind to come hang out inside. These huts were standard for peasants in the 14th century, built cheap and fast because, frankly, you didn't have the coin for anything better. The wattle, those interwoven sticks, gave the structure just enough backbone to stand upright, while the daub, that lovely mud-dung combo, was supposed to seal it tight. Spoiler, it didn't. Cracks form faster than gossip in a village square, and the wind finds every single one, slipping through like a thief who knows all your hiding spots. Historians still debate whether these homes were more effective as shelters or as medieval wind tunnels. But you're leaning toward the latter. Your toes are so cold they're staging a mutiny, and you're pretty sure you heard the roof groan like it's ready to retire. Let's talk about the roof. Thatch sounds cozy, like something out of a fairy tale, but in reality, it's a soggy, sagging mess by midwinter. Snow piles up, rain seeps through, and sometimes a bird or two decides it's a great spot for a nest. One particularly brutal winter in 1321 saw villages across England lose roofs to heavy snow, leaving families exposed to the elements. You're lucky if your thatch is only leaking. Some folks woke up to find half their roof on the floor, probably with a squirrel staring at them judgmentally. Windows? If you're fancy, you've got a small hole covered with a scrap of cowhide or a wooden shutter. Glass is for lords and people who don't sleep next to their livestock. That hide flaps in the wind, letting in drafts so cold they feel personal. Then there's the floor, good old dirt, packed hard, maybe sprinkled with some straw if you're feeling extra. When it rains or snows, that dirt turns into a muddy soup, like your house decided to become a swamp just for fun. You try to keep it dry, but it's like mopping the floor during a flood. Oddly, the weirdest detail about these homes, some peasants believed rubbing sheep grease into the walls added extra insulation, smelled like a barnyard crime scene. But when you're shivering so hard your teeth sound like a medieval drum solo, you'll try anything. Joke number 1. You'd call your house drafty. but that implies it's keeping some wind out. It's more like an open invitation to every breeze in the county. You fight back with what you've got. You grab handfuls of moss from the forest and jam them into the biggest cracks. Old rags, too worn to wear, get stuffed into gaps like you're plugging a sinking ship. If you're really desperate, you might slap another layer of mud and dung on the outside, standing there in the freezing cold, hands numb, muttering, "This is fine." It's not fine, but it's better than nothing. Privacy? Forget it. Your whole family's crammed into this one-room disaster, plus a goat who's decided it's part of the gang. The wind's still winning, but you're not going down without a fight. You pull your cloak tighter, glare at the flapping cowhide window, and wonder if spring's ever coming. Spoiler, it's only December. Good luck. You're lying on your so-called bed, a lumpy sack of straw that's about as comfortable as sleeping on a pile of broken promises, and the cold is coming for you from below. The floor of your medieval hut isn't some polished hardwood or even a nice slab of stone. It's just dirt, packed tight, maybe covered with a thin layer of straw or rushes if you've had a good week. In the dead of winter, around the 1352nd, that dirt floor turns into a frozen enemy, seeping cold into your bones like it's got a personal grudge. You shift, trying to find a spot that doesn't feel like you're lying on an ice block, but it's no use. The ground is relentless, a silent thief, stealing your warmth with every passing minute. Your toes curl instinctively, and you wonder if they'll ever forgive you for this. Back then, floors weren't just uncomfortable. They were a survival challenge. During the harsh winter of 1348, when the Black Death was already knocking on doors, the cold ground made things worse, weakening bodies already battered by hunger and disease. Historians still debate whether the frozen floors contributed more to illness than malnutrition in those years. But you're not here for a lecture. You're here to not freeze to death. The dirt beneath you isn't just cold. It's damp when the snow melts or rain sneaks in, turning your floor into a muddy mess that sticks to everything. Step on it barefoot, and you're signing up for a frostbite lottery. Joke number 1. You'd call it a floor, but it's more like nature's coldest hug, delivered straight to your spine. To fight back, you pile on the straw, thick as you can manage. If you're lucky, you've got enough to create a decent barrier, but straw flattens fast, turning into a sad, moldy pancake under your weight. Some folks use rushes, those long, grassy plants layered over the dirt like a medieval carpet. Sounds nice, right? Except they don't clean out the old ones often, so you're sleeping on a composting pile of damp plants, fleas, and mystery crumbs. Oddly, the weirdest detail is that some peasants swore by mixing herbs like lavender into the rushes to mask the smell of their unwashed lives. It's like putting perfume on a pig. It's still a pig, but now it smells like a fancy pig. You're not fooled, but it's a nice thought. You toss and turn, the straw crunching like it's mocking your misery. Your bed, if you can call it that, is just a wooden frame, or maybe just the floor itself, piled with more straw. It's less cozy slumber and more survival mode, keeping you just far enough off the ground to avoid becoming a human icicle. The cold creeps up anyway, worming through the straw, making you shiver so hard you're practically doing a medieval workout. Joke number 2. You dream of a better bed, but you're too busy dreaming of not waking up frozen to the floor. Your family's nearby, snoring or muttering, their breath fogging in the dim light of the hearth. That fire's your only ally, but it's across the room, and its warmth barely reaches you. You pull your cloak tighter, maybe add another layer of whatever rags you've got. The goal isn't comfort, it's survival. You're not just fighting the cold, you're fighting the ground itself. That unyielding slab of earth that wants to turn you into a popsicle. You tuck your hands under your armpits, curl into a ball, and hope the straw holds out till morning. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, and you're pretty sure it's laughing at you. Spring feels like a fairy tale, but you're not giving up. You've got grit, a questionable pile of straw, and a stubborn streak that says you'll see another sunrise, even if it's through chattering teeth. You huddle closer to the hearth, the only spot in your drafty hut that feels remotely like a friend in this frozen nightmare. The fire pit isn't some fancy fireplace with a stone mantel and a cozy chimney. It's just a shallow hole in the middle of the room, ringed with stones you've scavenged from the fields, maybe blackened from years of soot and desperation. The flames flicker weakly, casting dancing shadows on the mud walls, and the warmth radiates out in a tiny circle, like a reluctant hug that barely reaches your fingertips. Outside, the wind howls like it's auditioning for a horror story. But in here, that sputtering fire is your lifeline, your flickering hope against the endless cold. You poke at the embers with a stick, watching sparks pop and swirl. And for a moment, the crackle drowns out the chill creeping in from every direction. This hearth isn't just for show. It's the beating heart of your medieval survival strategy, especially in the brutal winters of the 14th century, when Europe was still reeling from the Little Ice Age that kicked off around 1300. Temperatures plummeted, rivers froze solid, and villages like yours turned into icy ghost towns overnight. Remember how we talked about those drafty walls letting the wind party inside? Well, without this fire, you'd be toast or more like frozen bread. The hearth does double duty. It's your kitchen by day, where you boil up whatever sad stew you can scrape together from turnips and a scrap of salted pork. And by night, it's your light source, chasing away the pitch-black darkness that swallows everything after sunset. No candles for you. Peasant wax is for churches and lords who don't share their bed with a goat. You lean in, feeling the heat kiss your face, but it's a smoky affair. Most huts like yours didn't have chimneys. That luxury came later, around the 15th century in fancier homes. Instead, the smoke just billows out, drifting lazily toward a hole in the roof or seeping through cracks in the walls. It's like living in a perpetual barbecue pit, your eyes watering, your lungs protesting with every breath. Oddly, one unusual detail historians love is how that constant smoke acted as a natural pest control. Fleas and rats hated it. So, while you're coughing like you've got a side gig as a chimney sweep, at least you're not sharing your straw bed with an army of itchy invaders. Joke number 1. You'd call it a smoke alarm, but it's more like the smoke is the alarm, the fire, and the reason you're wide awake at midnight, wondering if you're turning into a human ham. Keeping the fire alive is a full-time job, demanding constant care like a needy pet that bites if you ignore it. You add a precious stick of wood. Dry ones are gold in winter, hoarded like treasure, and watch it catch, the flames leaping a bit higher. Let it die out, and restarting in the freezing dark is a nightmare. No matches, just flint and steel clacking together, sparks flying if you're lucky, and a whole lot of cursing under your breath. During the harsh winter of 1432, when blizzards buried parts of England under feet of snow, entire families perished because their hearths went cold overnight, unable to relight in the sub-zero chill. You know better. You bank the fire before bed, burying the embers under ash, like tucking in a child, hoping it'll smolder till morning. Historians still debate whether more lives were saved by this simple banking technique or by the sheer stubbornness of peasants who refused to let winter win. The hearth's warmth doesn't spread evenly. It's hottest right up front, roasting your toes if you're lucky enough to snag that spot, but fading fast the farther you get. You shift closer, ignoring the singe on your cloak's edge, because being too far means you're basically outside with worse company. Sensory-wise, it's a mix. The wood smoke stings your nose, mingling with the earthy scent of the dirt floor and whatever's bubbling in the pot, maybe oat porridge, thickened with a bit of fat for extra calories. The pops and hisses lull you into a drowsy rhythm, like nature's ASMR, but with the added thrill of wondering if a spark will jump out and set your straw bed ablaze. Joke number 2. Modern folks have white noise machines. You've got a fire that sounds like it's whispering secrets, mostly about how it might burn your house down if you blink. Everyone in the family pitches in. Your kids, if they're old enough, take turns stoking it, learning early that winter doesn't do participation trophies. Even the animals crowd around, their breath adding steamy warmth to the mix. That cow in the corner? She's not just livestock, she's a radiator on legs. You stare into the flames, mesmerized, because after dark, this is your entertainment. No Netflix, just fire, gazing, and maybe a story from your gran about the time a blizzard buried the village well. The light dances on faces, turning your family's worried expressions into something almost cozy. A brief illusion of safety in a world that's anything but. But the hearth demands sacrifices. Wood runs low in midwinter, forcing you to venture out into the snow for more, branches snapping underfoot like brittle bones. Peat, if you're near a bog, burns slow and smoky, a lifesaver in lean times. You ration it carefully, knowing one wrong move and the cold wins. Joke number 3. You'd upgrade to a chimney if you could, but for now, you're rocking the smoked peasant look. It's all the rage in freezing huts everywhere. The fire crackles on, a stubborn spark in the darkness, reminding you that hope's fragile but fierce. You add another log, watch it catch, and feel a tiny victory. The night's long, the cold's patient, but with this hearth holding the line, you might just make it to dawn. Pull that cloak tighter, we've got more battles ahead. You stare into the dying flames of your hearth, the orange glow fading to a sullen red as the night deepens. And you know what comes next. The delicate dance of banking the embers, that ancient art of tucking your fire in for the night, like a child who's had too much excitement. The wind rattles the cowhide over your window hole, a persistent reminder that if this fire goes out completely, you're in for a world of frozen regret. You grab a poker, nothing fancy, just a twisted stick from the woodpile, and carefully stir the coals, watching sparks leap like tiny fireworks in the smoky air. The heat kisses your knuckles, a brief warmth against the chill that's already nipping at your heels, and you breathe in the sharp tang of burning wood mixed with the earthy scent of the dirt floor beneath you. This isn't just busy work, it's survival, a ritual passed down through generations of shivering peasants who learned the hard way that winter doesn't forgive forgetfulness. Banking the fire means burying those glowing embers under a blanket of ash, insulating them so they smolder slowly through the night, ready to roar back to life at dawn without you having to start from scratch in the freezing dark. You scoop the ash with your hands calloused and soot-streaked, smelling faintly of yesterday's stew, and pile it gently over the coals, patting it down like you're shaping a pie crust. Too loose, and the wind sneaks in to snuff them out. Too tight, and they suffocate under their own weight. It's a Goldilocks game, and getting it just right feels like outsmarting nature itself. The ash is warm against your palms, powdery and fine, with that subtle heat that promises tomorrow's fire without today's hassle. You step back, wiping your hands on your tunic, and the room falls quieter, the crackles muffled now, like the hearth is whispering secrets to itself in the dim light. This technique wasn't invented overnight. It evolved during those brutal medieval winters when fuel was scarcer than a sunny day in February. Take the harsh winter of 1407 France, when blizzards buried villages and wood supplies ran dangerously low. Chronicles from the time describe families surviving solely because they mastered banking, stretching their meager logs through nights that seemed endless. Without it, restarting a fire meant fumbling with flint and steel in the pitch black, your fingers so numb they feel like they're borrowed from a snowman. Strike, spark, curse, repeat until you either get a flame or give up, and huddle under your cloak, praying for mercy. The flint clacks sharply against the steel, a metallic ping that echoes in the silence, and if you're lucky, a spark catches on your tinder, that dry fluff of grass or bark you've hoarded like gold. But in sub-zero temps, even that can fail, leaving you with nothing but regret and frost-nipped toes. Oddly, one unusual detail about banking is how some peasants swore by adding a pinch of damp ash on top, believing it created a steamy seal that locked in the heat. Better historians still debate whether this was clever science or just wishful thinking born from desperation, as records from the era show mixed results in different regions. You try it anyway, sprinkling a bit of moisture from a nearby bucket, and watch the faint steam rise like a ghost, carrying the faint, acrid scent of wet wood. It might be folklore, but when your breath is fogging the air inside your own hut, you'll cling to any edge. Joke number 1. You'd call this fire banking a savings account, but instead of interest, it just gives you a fighting chance not to wake up as a peasant popsicle. You settle back, the embers now safely buried, their glow a subtle pulse under the ash mound, like a heartbeat you can almost feel in the room. The air cools quickly without the open flames, but you know this is the price for longevity. Better a slow burn than a quick blaze that leaves you high and dry by midnight. Remember those drafty walls we talked about? The ones that let the wind waltz right in? Well, a sudden gust could still ruin your hard work, sneaking through a crack and scattering the ash like confetti at a particularly cruel party. You glance at the door, reinforced with an extra rag stuffed in the gap, and hope it's enough. The sensory shift is immediate. The room darkens further, shadows lengthening across the straw-strewn floor, and the smoky haze thins, letting the cold's crisp bite sharpen in your nostrils. Your family stirs nearby, bundled in their own layers, their breaths sinking in a rhythmic hush that almost lulls you. Mastering this art feels empowering, like you've got a secret weapon against the season's siege. You recall tales from your gran about winters when banking saved the day or didn't. In one story, a neighbor's clumsy sheep knocked over the ash pile in the night, extinguishing the embers and forcing a frantic restart at dawn. Ever since, you've kept your livestock corralled in the corner, their snorts and shifts of background noise like a barnyard orchestra tuning up. Joke number 2. Banking the fire is like putting your hopes in a blanket cozy until a goat decides it's bedtime snack time. The warmth lingers on your skin, a fading echo, and you curl up closer to the hearth, feeling the subtle heat radiate through the stones. It's not much, but in this era, it's everything a bridge to morning, a promise that the cold won't claim you yet. As the night stretches on, you lie there, listening to the muffled pops from under the ash, each one a tiny reassurance. The technique varies by family. Some pack the embers tight, like a secret, Others leave them loose to breathe, sparking debates at village gatherings that rival arguments over the best ale. You favor the tight pack, learned from your pa, who claimed it burned steadier through the wee hours. Sensory-wise, the ash's texture is gritty between your fingers, leaving black smudges that blend with the grime on your hands, and the faint warmth seeps into your palms like a whispered comfort. If it works, come dawn you'll poke the mound gently, uncovering live coals that flare with fresh wood, the flames leaping back like old friends. Fail, and you're back to flint clacking in the dark, your breath visible even indoors, the cold laughing at your efforts. This isn't just about fire, it's about persistence, that peasant grit that turns desperation into routine. Joke number 3. Modern folks have thermostats that adjust themselves. You've got a pile of ash and a prayer, which honestly feels more adventurous, like extreme camping with higher stakes. You drift towards sleep, the embers' subtle glow a beacon in the gloom, knowing you've bought yourself a few more hours of relative safety. The wind outside mocks you still, but inside, you've claimed a small victory. Remember that frozen floor seeping cold from below? With the banked fire holding steady, it's one less enemy to battle tonight. You close your eyes, the smoky scent lingering like a lullaby, and let the rhythm of the hidden coals carry you into uneasy dreams, where spring feels just a breath away, even if reality says otherwise. You shift uneasily on your straw bed, the prickly stalks jabbing at your back like 1,000 tiny accusations, and realize the cold isn't just coming from the floor or the walls, it's everywhere. A suffocating blanket that's heavier than any wool you own. The banked embers in the hearth glow faintly under their ash mound, offering a whisper of warmth, but it's not enough to chase away the frost that's settling into your bones. You glance at your family scattered around the one-room hut, your spouse curled up nearby, kids bundled in rags, maybe a grandparent snoring softly in the corner. The wind howls outside, rattling the cowhide window, covering like it's trying to break in for a midnight chat, and you know what has to happen next. Personal space? That's a luxury for summer. Tonight, it's time to form the human lasagna, piling everyone together in a desperate huddle to share body heat and fend off the freezing night. You scoot closer, pulling the kids in tight, feeling their small breaths warm against your chest, and layer on like living blankets, each body a barrier against the chill that's already making your fingers tingle. This huddling isn't just a cozy family tradition. It's a survival tactic honed over centuries of brutal winters, especially during the Little Ice Age that gripped Europe from the 1302 onward, turning nights into endurance tests where the weak didn't wake up. You wrap an arm around your youngest, their hair tickling your chin, and feel the collective warmth start to build. A slow, radiating glow that's part body heat, part sheer willpower. The air in the huddle thickens with the scent of unwashed wool, smoky clothes from the hearth, and that faint, earthy tang of the dirt floor beneath you. Remember how that frozen ground seeps cold like an evil spirit? Well, now you're all fighting it as one. Bodies pressed so close, you can hear heartbeats sinking in the darkness. Sensory-wise, it's a mix. The soft rustle of cloaks shifting, the occasional sigh or mumble, and that comforting pressure of limbs tangled together like a living fortress against the wind's icy fingers, probing through the cracks. You arrange strategically, just like peasants did back then, stronger adults on the outside, acting as human shields to block the drafts, while the frail ones, like babies or elders, get tucked deep in the center, swaddled in the warmest spot where heat pools like a secret pool. Your gran, with her arthritic joints, nestles in the middle, her stories from earlier lulling everyone into a drowsy rhythm, her breath steady and reassuring. Kids squeeze between parents, their small forms generating surprising warmth, like little furnaces fueled by the day's leftover energy. If Cousin Ethel drops by, unexpectedly, maybe her own hut's roof is leaking again, you make room, shifting the pile with a grunt and a muttered joke about how the more the merrier means fewer frozen toes. Oddly, one unusual detail about these huddles is how some families incorporated pets or even a stray goose for extra insulation. The bird's feathers trapped heat better than expected, though waking up to a peck on the nose was the trade-off. You feel a knee in your side, but ignore it, better that than the alternative, where isolation meant hypothermia, claiming you one shiver at a time. Historians still debate whether communal huddling saved more lives during the devastating winter of 1437-38, when blizzards across northern Europe froze rivers solid and buried villages, or if it was the shared storytelling that kept spirits from breaking in those endless nights. You lean into the pile, feeling the warmth seep through layers of tunics and cloaks. That scratchy wool now, a savior rather than an itch. The huddle forms naturally, bodies molding together like dough in a baker's hands, creating pockets of trapped air that hold heat better than any single blanket. Your spouse's back presses against yours, a solid anchor, and you exhale slowly, watching your breath fog less intensely in this microclimate you've built. It's not glamorous. Someone's elbow digs into your ribs, and the smells are a potent brew of sweat, smoke, and whatever lingered from dinner, but it's effective, turning a freezing hut into a barely tolerable cocoon. You adjust slightly, careful not to disrupt the lasagna too much, because one wrong move and Aunt Maud rolls into the drafty edge, earning you the family villain title come morning. The kids fidget at first, whispering complaints about squished arms, but soon settle, their breathing deepening into sleep's gentle cadence. Sensory overload hits, the soft wool against your cheek, warm and slightly damp from shared exhales, the faint vibration of snores rumbling through the pile like distant thunder, and that underlying chill still lurking at the edges, reminding you this is temporary armor, not invincibility. Joke number 1. You'd call this a family hug, but it's more like a medieval mosh pit, where the goal is not to rock out, but to not freeze out. You chuckle quietly to yourself, the sound muffled in the huddle, and feel a wave of bonding wash over long nights like this birthed stories, songs, and unbreakable ties, muffled conversations under shared cloaks, forging connections that lasted beyond the thaw. As the hours drag on, the huddle evolves. Someone shifts to check the banked fire. Remember that ash mound we tucked in earlier, smoldering like a promise, and returns quickly, burrowing back in with a rush of cold air that makes everyone groan. But the warmth rebounds fast, bodies compensating like a living organism. Babies get the prime center spot, treated like precious heat cores, their cries hushed with gentle rocks and whispers. Elders share wisdom in low tones, tales of past winters that make this one seem survivable. You feel your own tension ease, the cold's grip loosening as collective heat builds, turning shivers into sighs. Joke number 2. Modern sleepovers have pillow forts and movies. Yours has a human fort, and prayers that no one farts in the pile talk about a gas chamber with historical vibes. The wind batters the walls, but inside, The huddle holds, a testament to ingenuity over isolation. You think of villages where folks didn't huddle, stories of lone souls found frozen stiff come spring and pull everyone closer. This isn't just about warmth, it's strategic, a barrier against frostbite's sneaky advance on exposed skin. Your toes, curled against a sibling's leg, start to thaw, pins and needles dancing like unwelcome guests. The scents intensify: wool, smoke, a hint of lavender from rushes on the floor, but it's comforting now, a signature of survival. Joke number 3. You'd upgrade to a king-sized bed if you could, but for now, this family-sized lasagna is serving up warmth with a side of elbow jabs, bon appetit, winter edition. Dawn creeps closer, the huddle's heat a steady pulse against the night's retreat. You drift in and out, lulled by the rhythm of breaths, the occasional rustle, knowing this pile of humanity is your best shot at seeing another day. The cold still whispers threats through the cracks, but united like this, you're stronger, warmer, ready to face whatever the freeze throws next. Your mind wanders to the livestock in the corner. Soon they'll join the fray for extra heat, but for now, this human knot is enough, a living rebellion against winter's siege. You're wedged into the human lasagna, the collective warmth of your family, a fragile shield against the cold that's clawing at your hut's flimsy walls. But there's another heat source you can't ignore, the snuffling, slightly smelly presence of your livestock, crowded into the corner like uninvited guests who brought their own blankets. The cow's breath steams in the dim light, mingling with the smoky haze from the banked hearth, and the goats shuffle restlessly, their hooves scuffing the straw-strewn dirt floor. It's not exactly a fairy tale slumber party, but in the dead of a medieval winter, say around the 1362nd, when Europe was still shivering through the Little Ice Age, these animals are more than just farmyard buddies. They're your coziest, if stinkiest, allies, generating body heat that could mean the difference between waking up with all your fingers or losing a few to frostbite's greedy grip. You pull your cloak tighter, the scratchy wool catching on your calloused hands, an inch closer to the cow, who's chewing cud like she's got nowhere better to be. Bringing animals indoors wasn't just a quirky tradition, it was a survival necessity, especially during winters, like the one in 1362, when heavy snows across England turned fields into icy graves for livestock left outside. Cows, goats, pigs, even chickens, they all pile into your one-room hut, turning it into a chaotic, living furnace. The cow, big and warm, takes center stage, pressed against a wall where her bulk blocks a draft. Remember those wind tunnel walls we talked about? She's like a furry radiator, her body radiating heat you can feel even a foot away. Goats squeeze in closer, their wiry warmth less intense but still welcome, though they've got a knack for nibbling anything within reach, including your cloak's hem. Chickens cluck softly, roosting in baskets or on rafters, their feathers trapping tiny pockets of warmth. Pigs, well, they just flop wherever they please, snorting like they own the place, their heavy bodies adding to the heat, but also to the chaos. Sensory overload hits. The air's thick with the musky scent of damp fur, the faint ammonia tang of manure, and the rustle of hooves on straw, like a barnyard symphony that never quite finds its rhythm. This setup wasn't just about warmth, it was strategic. Animals indoors meant fewer frozen carcasses come spring, and in a lean winter, every cow was a future meal you couldn't afford to lose. Plus, their body heat was a godsend, pushing the hut's temperature up just enough to keep hypothermia at bay. Historians still debate whether livestock sharing saved more peasants through warmth or through preserved food sources during the famine-heavy winters of the 14th century, but you're just glad for the extra degrees. Oddly, one unusual detail is how some peasants believed a cow's warm breath could ward off sickness, like a medieval air purifier, probably just superstition. But when you're coughing in a smoky hut, you'll take any edge, even if it smells like hay and regret. Joke number 1. You'd call this a pet-friendly home, but it's less pet and more, please don't poop on my straw bed. The downside? Oh, it's legendary. The smell is a punch to the face. Imagine a mix of wet dog, barnyard mud, and that one time you forgot to clean the stew pot for a week. By spring, your hut's aroma could knock out a passing night. And then there's the chaos. A chicken might decide your hair's a great midnight perch, leaving you with feathers in your face and a new grudge. Step barefoot into a suspicious pile, and you're cursing the pig who didn't get the memo about house manners. Still, you tolerate it because the math is simple. Cold kills, livestock cuddles. You pat the cow's flank, feeling her steady warmth seep through your fingers, and ignore the goat trying to chew your sleeve. The sensory mix is intense. The soft brush of wool against your skin, the low hum of animal breaths, the faint crackle of the banked fire in the background, all blending into a strange, smelly comfort. You arrange the animals like furniture, nudging them into spots where their heat does the most good. The cows against the wall, blocking a draft. Goats cluster near the kids for extra warmth. Chickens stay high to avoid getting stepped on. It's like a medieval Tetris game, except the pieces move and occasionally kick. Joke number 2. Modern folks have heated blankets. You've got a cow that farts in her sleep. Guess which one's more exciting to wake up to? You settle back into the human huddle, the livestock's warmth blending with your family's, creating a pocket of survival in this icy world. The wind outside screams, but in here, the animal's steady breathing feels like a promise. You're not alone in this fight. As the night stretches on, you drift in and out, lulled by the animal's soft noises, the cow's low moo, the goat's occasional bleat, the chicken's sleepy clucks. It's not quiet, but it's alive, a reminder that warmth and survival are shared burdens. You think of the stories your gran told about winters when animals saved families, their heat carrying them through nights when the fire alone wasn't enough. Joke number 3. You'd post a picture of this cozy setup on social media, but the caption would just be, "Number send help. Number goat stole my blanket." The hearth's embers pulse under their ash blanket, the livestock add their steamy heat, and you feel the cold retreat just a little. It's not luxury, but it's life. And for now, that's enough to keep you going until dawn creeps through the cracks, bringing another day to battle the freeze. You stand in your medieval hut, the wind shrieking outside like it's got a personal score to settle, and you're piling on every scrap of clothing you own, transforming into a walking laundry pile just to keep the cold from claiming you. It's the 1372nd, deep in a winter, that feels like it's trying to rewrite you as a frozen statue. And fashion isn't about looking good, it's about not dying. You pull on a scratchy linen undertunic, stiff with weeks of sweat and soot, then layer on a thicker woolen tunic, its fibers catching on your calloused hands. Over that goes another tunic, sagging at the knees like it's given up on life, and a cloak that smells suspiciously like the goat sleeping in the corner. Remember those livestock roommates? You drape it over your shoulders, the weight heavy but welcome, and if you're lucky, You've got a patched sheepskin to toss on top, a trophy of survival that's more itch than elegance. Your breath fogs in the dim light, mixing with the smoky haze from the banked hearth, and you feel like a human onion, each layer a desperate bid to trap your fading body heat. This isn't about style medieval peasants in winters, like the brutal one of 1371, when snowdrifts buried villages across Europe, didn't have the luxury of flipping through a wardrobe for vibes. Clothes were your armor, and you wore everything at once, no exceptions. Boots? A dream for most. Instead, you wrap your feet in layers of cloth scraps, stuffing them into wooden clogs that clack on the dirt floor like a sad percussion section. If the cold still bites through, you add another rag and pray your toes don't go numb. Washing these clothes? Not happening. Dragging your only tunic to a frozen stream, smashing through ice, and waiting 2 days for it to dry or freeze solid is a gamble you don't take. The sensory hit is vivid. The wool scratches against your skin, heavy and damp from your own sweat. The air smells of smoke, sheep, and the faint tang of unwashed humanity, and your fingers fumble with knots, numb but stubborn, tying layers tight. Clothing was a lifeline, not a luxury. During the Great Famine of 1315-17, when winter and starvation teamed up to devastate Europe, those with extra layers, however ragged, had a better shot at surviving. Historians still debate whether clothing layers or food stores saved more lives in those lean years, but you're just focused on not shivering yourself into oblivion. Oddly, one quirky detail stands out. Some peasants deliberately let their clothes get greasy, believing the built-up oils from their skin and meals added an extra windproof layer. It's like wearing a medieval raincoat, except it smells like a mix of bacon, fat, and despair. You rub your hands over your tunic, feeling the grimy crust, and figure it's worth a shot better stinky than frozen. You waddle to the hearth, your layers making you move like a lumpy scarecrow, and check the embers still smoldering. Thank goodness, because restarting that fire is a nightmare you'd rather avoid. The warmth barely reaches you through the wool, but it's enough to keep your teeth from chattering like a minstrel's tambourine. Joke number 1. You'd call this a fashion statement, but the only thing you're stating is, I'm not dead yet. Your hat, a simple wool cap, is pulled low over your ears, a prized possession that keeps your head from freezing to the wall in your sleep. Gloves, if you've got them, are just scraps of leather stitched together, looking more like a puppet show reject than high-end gear. Kids get swaddled until they look like overstuffed turnips, waddling around the hut, their muffled giggles a rare bright spot in the gloom. The layers don't just keep you warm, they're a mindset, a declaration that you're tougher than the cold snapping at your heels. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a puddle on the floor. Yep, still dirt, because that frozen ground we talked about loves to stay damp and laugh at the absurdity. You're a walking pile of rags, smelling like a barnyard, but every layer is a middle finger to winter. Joke number 2. Modern folks layer for Instagram aesthetic. You layer to avoid becoming a medieval ice sculpture. Guess whose look lasts longer? The sensory weight of the clothes presses down, a constant reminder of the stakes, but also a strange comfort, like armor you've forged from scraps and stubbornness. As night creeps in, you shuffle closer to the human lasagna, your family's huddle, warm and chaotic, where you'll pile in for extra heat. The livestock in the corner snort, their steamy breaths adding to the hut's foggy air, and you're grateful for their smelly contribution. Your layers make moving awkward, but you settle in, the wool scratch blending with the straw's prickle under you. Joke number 3. You'd enter a medieval fashion show, but the runway's frozen, and your cloak's already booked for goat snuggling duty. The cold still nips at the edges, finding gaps in your armor, but you've got enough layers to hold it at bay, at least for now. You breathe slowly, the air sharp in your nose, and let the warmth of your makeshift wardrobe sink in. Winter's a beast, but you're dressed for the fight, one grimy tunic at a time, ready to face the night with nothing but wool, grit, and a prayer for dawn. You're bundled in your layers of wool and grime, the scratchy weight of your tunics, a constant reminder that winter's got you in a chokehold. But there's a secret weapon in your medieval arsenal, the dirt itself. You run a hand over your cloak, feeling the crust of mud, sweat, and who knows what else baked into the fabric, and realize this isn't just neglect, it's tactical. In the 1382nd, with winter's icy claws digging into your village, that grimy layer on your clothes isn't a fashion faux pas. It's a thermal shield, clogging the gaps in your rough-spun wool to keep the wind from stealing your precious body heat. The air in your hut is thick with the scent of smoke from the banked hearth, the musky tang of livestock in the corner, and the faint, sour note of your own unwashed self. You're not winning any hygiene contests, but when the alternative is freezing solid, smelling like a goat who lost a bet is a small price to pay. This wasn't laziness. Medieval peasants knew that staying dirty could save their lives. Clean clothes, especially linen, were breathable, which sounds great until you're in a hut where the wind cuts through like a knife through soft cheese. That layer of grease and dirt, built up from weeks of avoiding frozen streams, acted like natural weatherproofing, sealing the fabric's weave against the cold's relentless assault. During the brutal winter of 1382, when snow buried fields across northern Europe, those who leaned into their grimy layers often outlasted their cleaner neighbors, their clothes doubling as insulation when firewood ran low. Historians still debate whether this filthy tactic was a conscious strategy or just a happy accident born of necessity. But you're not here to argue, you're here to survive, and every smudge on your tunic feels like a badge of defiance against the frost. You tug your cloak tighter, the fabric stiff and heavy with its crusty coating, and catch a whiff of something that's half smoke, half sheep, and all survival. The sensory hit is vivid. The wool scratches your neck, the grime leaves a gritty film on your fingers, and the cold air bites your nose with a sharp, clean edge that contrasts the hut's musty warmth. Oddly, one unusual detail stands out. Some peasants believed that rubbing extra animal fat, think sheep grease or lard, into their clothes added another layer of protection, like medieval Vaseline armor. You tried it once, smearing a bit of fat from last week's stew onto your sleeves, and now you smell like a walking butcher shop, but the wind doesn't cut through quite as easily. Joke number 1. You'd call this a skincare routine, but it's more like a stay alive routine, and your tunic's the real MVP. Washing is a distant dream. Dragging your clothes to a stream in this weather means smashing through ice, scrubbing with hands that go numb in seconds, and waiting days for your only shirt to dry if it doesn't just freeze into a sad, stiff plank first. You learned that lesson the hard way when you tried washing a tunic last winter and ended up wearing a damp, icy rag that made you shiver harder than a bard at a tax collector's audit. Instead, you embrace the filth, letting it build like a second skin. It's not just your clothes, your hands, face, and hair carry the same smoky, greasy sheen, blending with the hut's aroma of livestock and damp straw. You glance at the human lasagna In the corner, your family huddled together, their own grimy layers adding to the collective warmth we talked about earlier, and feel a strange pride. You're all walking proof that dirt isn't defeat, it's strategy. The hearth's embers pulse faintly under their ash blanket, a reminder of the fire banking trick that's keeping you from a flint and steel nightmare. You shuffle closer. The dirt floor still a frozen menace, beneath the straw crunching under your wrapped feet. The grime on your clothes traps heat better than you'd expected, but it's not perfect. The cold still finds gaps, sneaking in like a thief with a personal grudge. Joke number 2. Modern folks have gore, text jackets. You've got a tunic that's 90% mud and 100% attitude. Guess which one's got more character? You pat your cloak, feeling the crust flake under your fingers, and settle into the huddle, the warmth of bodies and livestock blending with your layered armor. The sensory mix is intense. The wolves itch, the faint crackle of the hearth, the heavy air thick with survival's perfume. Your neighbors don't judge the smell, everyone's in the same boat, or rather, the same stinky hut. Nose blindness is your village's unofficial superpower. By February, you could probably sleep next to a pile of rotting cabbages and call it aromatherapy. This grimy strategy isn't just practical. It's a mindset, a refusal to let winter's clean, cruel, cold win. You think of stories from your gran about winters when the dirtiest families survived the longest. Their clothes a fortress against the freeze. Joke number 3. You'd post a selfie of this look on medieval Instagram, but the caption would just be, "Number filth is wealth, number winter want win." The wind howls outside, but inside, your greasy tunic holds the line, a testament to ingenuity over elegance. You burrow deeper into the huddle, feeling the collective heat, and let the night's rhythm snores, livestock snuffles, and the hearth's faint pops carry you toward dawn. The cold's still out there, waiting, but your dirty armor's got you covered, one smudgy layer at a time. You sink into your bed, if you can call it, that a lumpy sack of straw that crunches under your weight like it's auditioning for a medieval percussion band. The cold from the dirt floor below seeps up, a relentless chill that's been your nemesis since winter clamped down on your village in, let's say, the 1392nd. This isn't a cozy mattress with fluffy pillows. It's a makeshift barrier between you and the frozen earth, a prickly pile of hay or straw stuffed into a coarse sack, maybe propped on a rough wooden frame if you're lucky. Most nights, it's just the floor, sprinkled with rushes or more straw to keep you from becoming one with the icy ground we've cursed before. The straw pokes through your tunic, jabbing your skin like tiny accusations, and the faint smell of mold and barnyard lingers, mixing with the smoky haze from the banked hearth. You shift, trying to find a spot that doesn't feel like lying on a bed of regrets, but comforts a fairy tale. Your goal is just to stay unfrozen until dawn. These beds were standard for peasants during winters, like the one in 1394, when heavy snows across Europe turned huts into iceboxes, and survival meant staying off the ground at all costs. Straw or hay mattresses were a lifeline, providing just enough insulation to keep the cold from claiming you outright. They weren't built to last, though over weeks, the straw flattened into a sad, crunchy pancake, growing moldy from the damp air and your own sweat. Some folks used rushes instead, those grassy plants we mentioned, layered thick to mimic a carpet. But here's the kicker. They rarely cleared out the old rushes, just piling fresh ones on top, creating a damp, decomposing ecosystem that attracted fleas like a medieval Airbnb for pests. Oddly, one quirky detail stands out. Some peasants sprinkled dried herbs like rosemary into their bedding, hoping the scent would mask the smell of livestock and unwashed bodies. Think of it as medieval Febreze, except it didn't stand a chance against a winter's worth of grime. You pull your grimy cloak tighter, remember that greasy armor we talked about, and feel the straw shift beneath you, each crinkle a reminder of your fragile defense. The sensory hit is vivid. The straw's sharp edges prick through your clothes. The air carries a damp, earthy tang, and the cold from the floor nibbles at your spine despite the bedding. Historians still debate whether straw beds or communal huddling saved more lives during the brutal winters of the late 14th century, when frostbite was as common as hunger. You're betting on both, because alone, this bed's about as comforting as a hug from a hedgehog. You curl up, tucking your knees to your chest, and try to trap heat in the folds of your layered tunics. The livestock in the corner snort softly, their warmth a distant tease, and you wish you could borrow their furry insulation without the smell. The bed's not just a place to sleep, it's a survival tool, lifting you just far enough off the frozen dirt to avoid waking up with toes blackened by frostbite. You toss and turn, the straw rustling like dry leaves, and feel a flea bite your ankle. Yep, these beds came with roommates, free of charge. Joke number 1. You'd call this a memory foam mattress, but the only thing it remembers is every bad decision you made this winter. Your family's nearby, piled into their own straw nests, or maybe sharing one big mattress in the human lasagna we've been building. The kids whimper as they settle, their small bodies sinking into the straw, and you pull them closer, their warmth blending with yours to form a pocket of defiance against the cold. Changing the straw is a big deal, done maybe twice a year if you're diligent, or when the bed starts moving on its own from all the critters living rent-free. You dream of fresh stuffing, but for now, you make do, fluffing the flattened hay with a tired hand. The sensory overload continues. The faint crackle of the hearth's embers, the rustle of your cloak as you adjust, the distant bleat of a goat who's decided midnight's the perfect time for a snack. Joke number 2. Modern folks have adjustable beds. You've got adjustable straw, and the only setting is slightly less pokey if you squint. You think of stories from your gran about winters when a good straw bed meant the difference between life and death, and you're grateful for this lumpy mess, fleas and all. As the night deepens, you settle into the rhythm of survival. The straws crunch, a strange lullaby. The cold still presses in, finding gaps in your defenses. But the bed keeps you just above the frozen floor, a small victory. You recall a neighbor who skipped the straw and slept on bare dirt last winter, found frozen stiff by spring, a cautionary tale you're not eager to repeat. Joke number 3. You'd trade this bed for a 5-star hotel, but for now, it's 5 stars for not letting the ground turn you into a peasant popsicle. The hearth's faint glow pulses, the livestock's breaths add a steamy warmth, and you drift towards sleep, the straw's prickly embrace, a reminder that survival's not pretty, but it's yours. Dawn's a long way off, but with this bed and your stubborn heart, you're ready to fight for it. You're crouched by the wall of your hut, fingers numb as you stuff a handful of damp moss into a crack where the wind's been sneaking in like a thief with a grudge. It's the 1,392nd, and winter's got your village in a chokehold, turning every gap in your wattle and daub shack into a battlefield. The walls, those flimsy weaves of sticks and mud we've cursed before, are about as windproof as a sieve. and the cold slips through with a whistle that sounds like it's mocking you. You jam in another wad of straw, the fibers prickling your skin, and add a scrap of rag for good measure, its frayed edges catching on the rough daub. The air smells of wet earth and smoke from the banked hearth, and your breath fogs in front of you, a reminder that the freeze is always one step ahead. This isn't just home maintenance. It's a war against the drafts that turn your hut into a medieval wind tunnel, and you're armed with nothing but nature's scraps and sheer stubbornness. Patching up the house was a survival art form, especially during winters like the one in 1396, when storms across Europe battered villages, collapsing roofs, and turning poorly sealed huts into icy graves. You move to the next crack, the mud wall, cold and gritty under your fingers, and shove in a clump of dried grass, hoping it holds against the gusts, rattling the cowhide window covering. The roof's no better thatch sags under snow, leaking like a tired old bucket, and you've plugged holes with bundles of reeds, or, in a pinch, chunks of turf swiped from a nearby field. Sensory-wise, it's a full-on assault. The moss is damp and spongy, leaving a green smear on your hands. The straw scratches like it's got a personal vendetta, and the faint whiff of dung from the wall's daub mixes with the smoky haze, creating a perfume you'd never bottle but can't escape. Oddly, one quirky detail stands out. Some peasants used animal hair, think sheep wool or even dog fur, mixed with mud to seal gaps, believing it added extra insulation and stuck better than straw alone. You tried it, mixing in some wool from a sheep that's now snoring in the corner, and it holds decently, though it makes your wall look like it's growing a patchy beard. Historians still debate whether this hairy patchwork was more effective than plain mud or just a desperate placebo for freezing families. But when the wind's howling like a pack of wolves, you'll take any edge. You step back, hands smudged with dirt and wool, and survey your work. The wall's still ugly, but it's slightly less drafty, a small victory in a season that doesn't hand those out easily. You move to the door, a creaky plank hung on iron nails, and stuff more rags into the gaps, the fabric catching on splinters as you work. Windows, if you can call them that, are just holes with shutters or hides, and you've smeared animal fat on the cowhide to make it stiffer against the wind, adding a greasy sheen that smells faintly of last week's stew. Joke number 1. You'd call this home improvement, but it's more like convincing your house not to betray you to the cold. The sensory hit keeps coming. The fats slick under your fingers, the air bites your nose with a crisp edge, and the faint crackle of the hearth's embers still holding steady from your banking trick offers a distant promise of warmth. You think of the livestock nearby, their steamy breaths adding to the hut's foggy air, and wonder if you should borrow a goat to block another draft. Every patch is a fight, a refusal to let the cold waltz in uninvited. You recall stories from your gran about winters when entire families froze because they didn't plug their walls in time, their huts turning into icy tombs. The great storm of 1362, which tore through southern England, left countless homes exposed when thatch roofs gave way, and only the most patched up survived. You slap on another layer of mud and dung to the outside wall, the cold muck numbing your hands as you mutter, "This is fine." It's not, but it's better than nothing. Joke number 2. Modern folks have duct tape for home repairs. You've got mud and a prayer, which is basically the same thing, just smellier. The wind finds new gaps as fast as you seal the old ones. Like it's playing a cruel game of hide and seek, you pause, catching your breath, the air sharp in your lungs, and glance at the human lasagna, your family huddled together, their grimy layers a testament to the survival we've built. The straw bed crunches under someone's restless shift, and you're reminded why this matters. Every draft you stop keeps the cold from stealing their warmth. Joke number 3. You'd hire a contractor, but the only one available is a squirrel, and he's already chewed through half your roof. You give the wall one last pat, the daub sticky and cold, and head back to the hearth, where the embers pulse like a heartbeat. The cold's still out there, probing, but for now, your patchwork holds a fragile fortress of moss, mud, and grit, standing between you and winter's next assault. You're slumped in the corner of your hut, the straw bed poking at your back like it's got a personal grudge, and the cold's pressing in from every side, walls, floor, even the air itself feels like it's conspiring against you. It's the 1392nd, and winter's turned your village into a frozen gauntlet where every night is a test of endurance. The banked hearth glows faintly, its embers a lifeline you've carefully nursed, but it's not enough to keep the chill from creeping into your bones. You're not sleeping yet, not with the fire needing constant attention, like a fussy child who'll throw a tantrum if ignored. Instead, you're on ember patrol, part of the medieval survival strategy of sleeping in shifts. Someone's got to keep the hearth alive, patch up stray drafts, and make sure the cold doesn't win, while the rest of the family, piled in that human lasagna we talked about, catches a few hours of restless shut-eye. You poke the ash mound gently, the warm, gritty texture under your fingers, a reminder of the fire-banking trick that's keeping you from a flint and steel nightmare. The air smells of smoke, damp wool, and the faint musk of the livestock snoring nearby, their steamy breaths adding a foggy warmth to the gloom. This shift system wasn't just a quirky habit, it was a lifeline during winters, like the one in 1399, when blizzards across northern Europe buried villages and left families scrambling to keep their fires going. Without matches or lighters, letting the hearth die meant hours of fumbling in the dark with flint and steel, your numb fingers clacking uselessly while the cold laughed in your face. You take your turn, eyes heavy, joints stiff from the chill, and nudge a stick into the embers, watching a spark flare briefly before settling. The sensory hit is vivid, the faint crackle of the fire, like a whispered promise, the cold dirt floor seeping through your wrapped feet, the distant snores of your family muffled by layers of grimy cloaks. You're half asleep yourself, but there's no snooze button in this world. One wrong move, and the fire's gone, leaving you all to freeze. Historians still debate whether sleeping in shifts or communal huddling saved more lives during those brutal winters. But you're not taking chances. You're doing both, because winter plays dirty. Oddly, one unusual detail stands out. Some families assigned kids as young as 6 to fire duty, teaching them to poke embers with the same seriousness as a knight training for battle. Your own kid, barely tall enough to reach the hearth, takes a shift later, their small hands steady, despite the cold. You watch them now, curled in the huddle, their breath fogging in the dim light, and feel a pang of pride they're learning early that survival's a team sport. You adjust a rag in a wall, crack those drafty gaps we patched are still a menace, and settle back by the fire, the stones warm against your shins. The livestock stir, a goat bleating softly like it's dreaming of greener pastures, and you're grateful for their heat, even if it comes with a side of barnyard perfume. Joke number 1, you'd call this a night shift, but it's more like a don't let us all freeze shift, great for building character, terrible for REM sleep. The rotation's not glamorous. You doze for a few hours, get elbowed awake, then stumble to the hearth, eyes gritty, to poke the fire back to life. Your gran stays up longer, her arthritis making lying down a chore, her low voice muttering tales of winters past to keep herself awake. The kids grumble when it's their turn, but they do it, learning the stakes through chattering teeth. Sensory-wise, it's a mix. The hearth's faint heat on your face, the smoky air stinging your eyes, the rustle of straw as someone shifts in the huddle. You're careful not to step on the goat, who's sprawled like he owns the place, or trip over the chicken roosting in a basket. Joke number 2. Modern folks have coffee to survive late nights. You've got a stick and a prayer, which is basically the same thing, just with more smoke inhalation. The fire's your focus, its glow a beacon in the darkness. You add a small log, rationed carefully, because wood's scarcer than a kind word from the tax collector. The flames flicker up, casting shadows that dance on the mud walls, and you feel a brief surge of triumph. You think of a neighbor who didn't keep shifts, last winter found frozen by spring, their hearth cold as stone. The memory keeps you vigilant, even as your eyelids droop. The wind howls outside, probing for weaknesses, but you're ready, stick in hand, guarding the embers like a knight guards a castle. Joke number 3. You'd trade this shift for a warm bed and a snooze button, but for now, you're the hero of the hearth, keeping winter at bay, one poke at a time. You settle back, the warmth seeping into your hands, and listen to the family's breaths, a steady rhythm that says you're all still here. Dawn's a distant promise, but with the fire holding and your shift underway, you've got this for now. You're curled in the human lasagna, the faint warmth of your family and the livestock steamy breaths, keeping the worst of the cold at bay. But there's another trick up your medieval sleeve, one so subtle, it's almost an art form. It's the 1,392nd, and winter's got your hut in a vice grip, the air so icy it feels like it's trying to freeze you from the inside out. You adjust your grimy cloak, remember that greasy armor, and focus on your breathing, keeping it shallow, slow, and strictly through your nose. Deep, open-mouthed gulps pull frigid air straight into your lungs, a one-way ticket to a cough that could land you in a grave by February. In a world where pneumonia was a death sentence, mastering survival breathing is as crucial as the banked hearth glowing faintly across the room. You inhale gently, the cold air warming slightly in your nostrils, and exhale a thin stream of fog that blends with the smoky haze, the scent of wool, straw, and cow lingering in the dim light. This wasn't just a quirk, it was a survival tactic, honed during winters like the one in 1401, when a brutal cold snap across Europe turned simple illnesses into village-wide disasters. Pneumonia, bronchitis, even a bad cough could finish you off faster than a wolf at your door, especially with no doctors, just your gran's onion tea and prayers to Saint Blaise for throat ailments. You learned early to breathe like you're sipping the air, not chugging it, letting your nose act as a tiny furnace to warm each inhale before it hits your chest. The sensory hit is immediate. The air's sharp edge softens in your nostrils, carrying a faint tang of smoke and damp earth. Your chest rises slowly, the rhythm calming despite the chill, and the cloak tucked over your face traps a pocket of warm, slightly damp air, like a makeshift mask. Historians still debate whether this breathing technique or better food stores kept more peasants alive during those plague-ridden winters. But you're not here for theories. You're here to not cough yourself into oblivion. Oddly, one quirky detail stands out. Some peasants wrapped scraps of cloth or shawls over their noses while sleeping, creating a crude breath, warmer that kept the air less icy but left a soggy patch by morning. You've got a rag draped over your face now, the wool scratchy but warm, smelling faintly of sheep and last week's stew. It's not stylish, but when your breath doesn't feel like swallowing icicles, you call it a win. You adjust the rag, the fabric sticking to your lips, and keep your inhales steady, the faint whistle of air through your nose blending with the snores of the huddle and the livestock's soft snuffles. Joke number 1. You'd call this a breathing exercise, but it's more like don't freeze your lungs. Yoga Medieval Edition, no Zen required. Kids get scolded for panting like dogs indoors. Their parents drilling the nose-breathing rule with the same urgency as teaching them to bank the fire. You glance at your youngest, nestled in the huddle's warm center, their small breaths steady through a tiny nose, and feel a flicker of pride they're learning fast. The technique's not perfect. A careless yawn pulls in, a blast of cold that makes you wince, your throat stinging like you've swallowed a splinter. You recover, nose breathing again, and think of grand stories about winters when whole families fell to lung sickness, their deep breaths inviting death. The sensory mix deepens, the straw bed crunches under a sibling's shift, the hearth's embers pop faintly, and the air's cold bite hovers just beyond your rag, waiting for a mistake. Joke number 2. Modern folks have humidifiers for dry air. You've got a soggy rag and a cow's fart for ambiance. Guess which one's more authentic? You settle deeper into the huddle, the warmth of bodies and grimy layers. Those dirt-caked tunics we praised, blending with your careful breaths to form a fragile cocoon. The livestock's heat, especially that cow's steady warmth, helps, but it's your breathing that keeps your lungs from turning traitor. You think of the sleeping shifts we talked about, someone stirring to poke the hearth, their own breaths fogging as they guard the fire. The rag over your face feels heavier now, damp from your exhales, but it's doing its job, softening the cold's edge. Joke number 3. You'd trade this for a heated mask, but for now, your soggy shawl's serving survival chic with a side of sniffles. The night stretches on, the wind howling outside like it's daring you to slip up, but you keep breathing slow, shallow, steady, each inhale a small rebellion against winter's siege. The huddle's warmth, the hearth's faint pulse, and your nose's quiet work carry you toward dawn, one careful breath at a time. You're nestled in the human lasagna, your family's warmth, and the livestock's steamy snuffles holding the cold at bay. But there's another weapon in your medieval survival kit, and it's sitting heavy in your gut. It's the 1,392nd, and winter's got your hut locked in its icy jaws. The air so cold, your breath fogs, even in the huddle. You've just shoveled down a bowl of thick, lumpy stewed turnips, barley, maybe a scrap of salted pork if you're lucky. And it's not just food, it's fuel, a slow-burning furnace, to keep your body warm through the night. Eating heavy before bed isn't about indulgence, it's about survival, turning calories into heat to fend off the frost that's waiting to turn you into a peasant popsicle. The stew's earthy scent lingers in the smoky air, mixing with the musk of wool and the faint barnyard tang from the cow in the corner, and your stomach gurgles, already working to churn that meal into life-saving warmth. This wasn't just a hearty dinner. It was a calculated move, especially during winters, like the one in 1408, when famine and cold teamed up across Europe, leaving villages starving and frozen. A full stomach meant your body burned energy overnight, generating heat to keep hypothermia at bay. You spooned up every bit of that stew, thick with root vegetables and grains, because foods that took longer to digest, like oats or fatty pork, kept your internal fire stoked for hours. Sensory-wise, it's a mix. The stew's warmth sits heavy in your belly, a comforting weight. The faint aftertaste of onions clings to your tongue, and the straw bed crunches under you as you settle in, the huddle's heat blending with your own. Historians still debate whether heavy meals or layered clothing saved more lives during those lean winters. But you're not picky, you're using both, because winter doesn't play fair. Oddly, one quirky detail stands out. Some peasants believed eating a bit of lard or fat straight from the pot added extra insulation, like swallowing a blanket. You tried it once, gulping a spoonful of greasy fat that tasted like regret, but warmed you like a hug from the inside. It's not gourmet, but when your toes are threatening to secede from your body, you'll eat anything that burns slow. You pat your stomach, feeling the stew settle, and lean into the huddle. The familiar press of family and grimy cloaks, those dirt-caked tunics we praised, keeping the cold from sneaking in. The sensory hit deepens. The faint crackle of the banked hearth, the soft snores of your kids, the livestock's rhythmic breathing, all weaving a fragile cocoon around you. Joke number 1. You'd call this a balanced diet, but it's more like a don't freeze by dawn, buffet bon appetit, medieval style. Parents made sure everyone ate, even the pickiest kids who turned up their noses at turnips. You remember scolding your youngest for pushing away their bowl, saying they'd regret it when the cold hit harder than a tax collector's knock. Harsh, but effective, nobody skips dinner when shivering's the alternative. The meal's not pretty, just a brown mush that sticks to the spoon, but it's a lifeline, sitting in your gut like a brick that radiates heat through the night. You think of grand stories about winters when empty stomachs meant frozen bodies, and you're grateful for every chewy bite. Joke number 2. Modern folks have meal prep for fitness. You've got meal prep for not turning into an icicle guess which one's got higher stakes. The downside? A heavy meal can spark vivid dreams, probably your stomach wrestling with a field's worth of cabbages. You shift in the huddle, the straw poking through your layers, and feel the warmth spread, your body burning calories like a tiny hearth. The livestock's heat, remember that cow's radiator vibes, adds to the mix. But it's your full belly that's the real hero, keeping you toasty even as the wind howls outside like it's auditioning for a ghost story. The air's thick with a scent of wool, smoke, and that faint stew afterglow. And you breathe carefully, those shallow nose breaths we mastered to avoid a cough. Joke number 3. You'd post this meal on social media, but the caption would just be, number calories for survival, number turnip life. The night stretches on, your stomach's steady burn blending with the huddle's warmth, and you drift towards sleep, the hearth's faint pulse a reminder that you've got one more trick to outsmart winter. Dawn's coming, and with a full gut, you're ready to face it, one warm breath at a time. You're buried deep in the human lasagna, your family's warmth, and the livestock's musky heat, wrapping you in a fragile cocoon against the cold that's been stalking your hut all winter. It's the 1,392nd, and the freeze has turned your village into a stubborn cluster of survivors, each breath a quiet defiance against the icy siege outside. But you're not fighting alone, your neighbors, those muddy, frostbitten souls in nearby huts, are in this with you, sharing embers, food, and grit to outlast the season. The banked hearth glows faintly, its smoldering ash, a testament to the firebanking trick we've leaned on, and the air carries the familiar mix of smoke, damp wool, and the faint tang of last night's stew still warming your gut. You shift, the straw bed crunching under your grimy layers, those dirt-caked tunics that double as armor, and feel the collective pulse of your community, a network of resilience that's as vital as the fire itself. The wind howls, rattling the patched walls we've stuffed with moss. But in this moment, you're part of something bigger, a village that refuses to let winter win. This wasn't just neighborly kindness, it was survival, woven into the fabric of medieval life, especially during winters like the one in 1410, when blizzards and famines swept through Europe, testing every village's strength. When a family's fire went out or their food ran low, the community stepped in, sharing coals bundled in rags or a sack of barley to keep starvation at bay. You think of old Tom, 2 huts down, whose chimney smoke stopped curling last week. Someone noticed, trudged through the snow, and found him shivering, his hearth cold. They dragged him to a warmer hut, rekindled his fire, and left a loaf of rye bread tough as leather but edible. Sensory-wise, it's vivid. The crunch of snow underfoot as you carry a glowing ember to a neighbor, the smoky scent clinging to your cloak, the faint warmth of shared stew in a borrowed bowl. Historians still debate whether village unity or individual ingenuity saved more lives during those brutal winters. But you know it's both alone, you're frostbite's prey. Together, you're a force. Oddly, one quirky detail stands out. Kids often played ember runners, darting between huts with hot coals wrapped in damp cloth, a game that doubled as a lifesaver when a neighbor's fire failed. Your own kid did it yesterday, their small face smudged with soot, grinning like they'd conquered a dragon. You smile, feeling the huddle's warmth, the livestock's soft snuffles. Remember that cow's radiator glow? And the straws prickle through your layers. The village watches out for everyone. The elderly, like your gran, keep an eye on whose hut looks too still in the morning frost. Young folks haul wood or check on the sick. You've done your part, sharing a precious log with a family whose supply ran low, the wood's rough bark scraping your hands as you handed it over. Joke number 1. You'd call this a neighborhood watch, but it's more like a nobody freezes on my watch. Crew less crime. Fighting, more coal sharing. Communal food stores were a lifeline too. When the harvest was lean, villages pooled their last grains and salted meat, dishing out grim but life-saving meals. You recall a night last month, crowded around a shared pot of porridge in the village square, the steam rising in the icy air, everyone's spoons clinking in weary unity. It wasn't a feast, but it was enough to see you through. The sensory memory lingers, the porridge's bland warmth, the crackle of a communal fire, the murmur of tired voices swapping stories to keep despair at bay. Even feuds, like the one over who borrowed your good shovel, get shelved when winter hits. Grudges don't keep you warm, but neighbors do. Joke number 2. Modern folks have potlucks for fun. You've got potlucks for not starving, same vibe, just with more turnips and fewer selfies. You settle deeper into the huddle, your careful nose breaths, those survival sips of air, steady and warm under your rag. The village's strength feels like an invisible thread, tying every hut together. You think of the sleeping shifts we've kept, someone always guarding the hearth, and how that vigilance spreads beyond your walls. Neighbors checking smoke, kids running embers, elders trading wisdom. The livestock stir, a goat bleating softly, and you're grateful for their heat, even if it comes with a whiff of barnyard. Joke number 3. You'd post this village spirit on social media, but the hashtag would just be number we all freeze or none of us do. Too long, but true. The night stretches, the cold probing for weaknesses, but your community's stubborn pulse, shared fires, shared food, shared hope, holds strong. Dawn's a promise, and with your village at your back, you're ready to meet it, one warm, united breath at a time. The fire's embers flicker softer now, their glow a gentle pulse in the quiet of your hut, as the long winter night begins to blur at the edges. You're still wrapped in the warmth of your family, the livestock's steady breaths, a low hum, the village's unspoken pact, holding you like a worn but sturdy blanket. The cold outside is fierce, unyielding, but in here, you've built something stronger, a fragile, beautiful web of survival, woven from straw, mud, grime, and the stubborn hope that spring will come again. Your breath slows, each shallow exhale a whisper of trust in the dawn, in the neighbors who will share their fire if yours falters, in the kids who will run embers through the snow. The wind's howl fades to a distant murmur, and you let your eyes drift closed. The straws prickle, and the cloak's weight fading into a soft, endless quiet. This isn't just about surviving, it's about carrying forward a legacy of resilience, one that lives in every patched wall, every heavy meal, every shared glance in the dark. You're not alone, and that's the secret winter can't break. The village sleeps, its heartbeats joined, and you sink into a dream where the ground thaws, the river runs free, and the sun warms your face like a long-lost friend. For now, rest easy, knowing you fought well, loved fiercely, and kept the fire alive. The cold will pass, as it always does, and you'll wake to a world that's a little brighter, a little softer, because of you.